Good morning, my spiritual warriors. Still running a little bit late, getting myself organized, getting my space organized. So feeling quite bright and fresh this morning. Anyway, I did this week's Runecast yesterday really early, and Mondays, which are normally quite a mild and calm day for me, actually sort of like went quite sideways quite quickly. So here I am a little bit later than intended. Anyway, having completed the runecast for this week, the foundation for the influences that will guide us this week continue in the same vein as last week. In fact, the rune that we got as our foundation for the underlying influences is identical to last week. So we need to continue to peel the onion of self, separating ourselves from um, old paths, shedding old skins, letting go of old habits, discarding outmoded relationships, learning to submit to the will of the Creator Spirit, and continuing to learn to retreat in strength. I know that this is really difficult. It's not always easy to step back from pressing situations, but sometimes we just have to. It just gives us that perspective that we need so that we can see more clearly. Essentially, the retreat in strength is designed to help us to regroup and reorganize our priorities. So that's going to be one of the key features of this week. We're also reminded that in all of this shedding and peeling, um, that it's important to give up the lesser good of I and the ego, um, so that uh, we can receive the spiritual benefits that comes from that release. And some would describe that as our spiritual inheritance. The past influences, which will have an impact on our growth this week, shows that many of us have yet to learn not to expect too much, too soon, or in the ordinary way. Understanding that the old way for us is over, and that if we continue to be seduced either by momentum or by emotion or by pressure into repeating the old and outgrown ways of ourselves, we will cause ourselves unnecessary suffering, and none of us want that. The past influences which prevailed this week call on us to draw in our scattered energies and focus on ourselves and our individual needs for growth and development. We are called upon not to bind ourselves to outcomes or in a broader sense our past achievements. We need to focus in the present and be present in every moment. This is going to be key. There are aspects of this week which are designed to test and build our character as deep shifts and reformation of the inner self is occurring. As is often the case, we will need to be patient and consistent in our efforts. We will need to keep ourselves centered and balanced as the external forces and influences around us will try to undermine and impede our progress. On a day-to-day basis, it showed that our term of labor or rebirth, to a certain extent, is coming to an end, and that we are coming into ourselves in some regard. Essentially, a shift that was due has now on some level occurred, and many of us will be able to freely receive the blessings that ensue. The work that we have and continue to do will liberate ourselves from the old and outgrown, and we will be rewarded with a heightened sense of well-being, a renewal of our clarity, along with a release of new energy. Again, we're reminded of the challenges of the main challenge, which is to submit to the will of the Creator Spirit who has led us to this point of rebirth. Being aware that for some of us, this will require us to renounce an existing plan or an ambition as we restore our inner self properly aligned to our higher self. The trends for the latter part of this week cautions against overreaching and excessive striving, and we are advised to guard against um, trying to exceed our own strength. We must not allow ourselves to be seduced into operating beyond the power we have funded to date. It's also shown that we are at risk of failing to draw on the wisdom of instinct, which could leave in turn our intuitive self and nature languishing, and this will also leave us feeling out of balance. This is an indicator that there is a blockage within that requires cleansing, and that it will be critical to our progress to turn inwardly and honor the receptive side of our warrior nature, lest we be led into temptation. The last thing that we want to do at this particular point in our development is to be led astray down some bizarre road that's got nothing to do with us. So, like I said before, try to stay present in the moment, live in the moment. Our principal challenge is to be present and live our lives one day at a time as we enter a period of major shift and positive change, with the potential for total transformation of self and our life situations is very, very possible. Radical trust in the Creator Spirit is required as the improvements we are being led to through a variety of opportunities cannot be seen from our current vantage point. It's shown that we still have a lot of work to do and are advised not to collapse into the promise of improvement or behave recklessly. For many of us, the darkness which has overshadowed our progress is behind us and the daylight is coming. However, we are also reminded that the darkest hour is before the dawn. So if there are moments this week where you really feel, ugh, don't give up, don't lose hope, things are getting better. You have to understand that we live in a kind of dual world. There's the surface material mundane world that goes around us that distracts us. It's kind of like, oh, good grief. It's all sorts of stuff. It's the world that we live around us. It's designed to distract us and undermine us, basically. um, so it doesn't matter how bad the world makes us feel about what's happening in the world, either locally or more broadly, know that improvement is coming. The shift happens always in the unseen world first, and then it percolates through to manifest in our reality. So don't give up. Overall, this week is about learning to defend ourselves by acting with foresight for the consequences of our words and actions. I know some people, I wish they would do this, but they don't, and that's their bad. Taking responsibility and being accountable for our decisions and our choices is absolutely key. Be aware that any blockages or delays that we might experience this week will prove beneficial in the long run. This week could well turn out to be a week of waiting, where our best defense is to be found in persevering and doing the right thing. We've got really, yeah, just doing the right thing and cultivating our own need to be patient and persevere. For some, this week could prove to be quite trying. However, again, we are reminded that it is through inconvenience and discomfort that growth is promoted. Finally, I'd like to mention that of the 6 runes that made up this week's cast, 4 of them are cycle runes. Cycle runes are quite special as they focus directly on the mechanisms for self change, healing, improvement, and transformation in their own unique ways. So there's nothing trivial about the lessons we're going to learn this week, whether the lessons are focused on ourselves or outwardly in the world. We may not be able to influence other aspects of the world, um, which we know or discover are harmful to us, but we can influence and control ourselves. And as I say, sort of like, while I don't like to bring the news and current events into the weekly rune readings, the past 2 weeks have been profoundly disturbing, to say the least, horrifying on a particular level. And it just never ceases to amaze me how people that should be taking responsibility and people who should be accountable are not. They expect us to take responsibility and they expect us to be accountable, but they themselves do not exert the same morals or values to themselves, which, quite frankly, I find disgusting. The thing is that while we can't influence them, we can influence and control ourselves. And that is the challenge of every spiritual warrior on this planet, irrespective of where we live, who's in control of our lives, how we live our lives. That is down to us. And if all of us or more of us did better at being true, responsible, um, I think the world would be a better place. So, as I say, I'm sorry for sort of like bringing my sheer horror at what has been revealed in the UK news this week. Um, but I'm off. I've just been left speechless. Notwithstanding, I can't do anything about the individuals involved in the wrongdoing that has come to light. Um, but I can take responsibility for myself and make sure that in my actions and conduct, I do my very, very best not to be seduced and led into temptation of doing the wrong thing at critical moments or at any time in particular. And I suggest, well, the creator spirit through the runes suggest that that is our challenge. Clear away the old, peel away the old and outgrown, the unwanted habits, the bad thought patterns, the stuff that undermines us, and continue to persevere, to do our best, to be our best. Have an absolutely fantastic week. And I'm not quite sure when I'll see you next week because this weekend is a big weekend for me. It's a milestone birthday. I've made it one more time around the sun. So I'm intending to go out and celebrate, and I might be a little bit the worse for wear at the early part of the week. But yeah, notwithstanding, I'll be here with the runes to inform you and guide you and enlighten you as to what the Creator Spirit requires from us next week. Till then, have a good one.